I'd like to read to you guys a sentence that I cannot get used to, and I'd like to ask all of you to give me what is the most absurd thing in this single sentence. I also want you to imagine me reading this sentence in like the year, I'm going to say, 2006. 5-star offensive tackle Felix Ojo, number 20 in the 2026 ESPN 300, committed to Texas Tech on Friday upon signing a historic 7-figure revenue share contract with the Red Raiders worth more than $5 million. His agent, Derek Shelby of Prestige Management, told ESPN. I want you to imagine me reading you that sentence 5 years ago, even 5 years ago. That one sentence of that. What is the most absurd thing in that sentence? Because I'm going to say that it's Texas Tech. My vote is, I've got Prestige Management, I've got his agent, I've got historic 7-figure revenue share contract, I've got committed to Texas Tech, I've got 5-star offensive tackle, number 20 in the ESPN 300. Not number 1, number 20.
Number 1 tackle, though, in fairness.
Those are important because the first 19 are probably quarterbacks.
Right.
Those are more important. But just the going rate on this stuff and how it is that you get into this game, you guys aren't yet numb to it, are you? Like when I read that single sentence to you, it's no longer strange in any way?
The revenue sharing is what sticks out to me there.
That is what sticks out to me as well, because you're starting to cut athletes in on ownership level income right now. You expect that when MLS and Inter Miami to get Lionel Messi gives him a piece of the club ownership, but you don't expect that when an 18-year-old offensive tackle coming out of high school is given revenue sharing. To me, that's groundbreaking.
It made me happy. Like, I just heard you read that, and I was excited about it because it means that players are going to end up getting a more equitable share of what they deserve. Like, the reality is like Tim Tebow should have made millions of dollars at UF just on jersey sales, and that's where revenue sharing comes in. Is part of that is going to be in the merch that's sold and things like that. So when a player is that popular nationwide, it's going to ultimately really help them, and especially regionally. So I think this is awesome to hear about.
I don't react with happy or awesome. I also don't react with anything at all negative. It's just sort of still shell-shocked about the fact that it's so different than it was 5 years ago. The beginning of the pandemic, this whole thing changed because USC was talking about forming a union. Or the players in a conference that no longer exists were threatening that they weren't going to play if they didn't get money. And then 4 years later, we're like, I am fascinated is what I am. I'm emotionally indifferent about it, but I can also, I guess, awe. I guess that can't be emotionless, right? Because I'm looking at it and I am not that far removed from Ta-Nehisi Coates writing in The Atlantic an article about reparations and an article about how it is that the NCAA was unjust. And at that time, 4 years, 5 years before the revolution, I could not have imagined the single sentence I just read to you about the nowhere program Texas Tech.
I think forming a college players union, that's crazy to me. After 150 years of amateurism, forming a union and then getting an agent, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
I mean, everything has changed, top to bottom, in sports, in college sports especially. And you look back, I mean, Carl Yastrzemski was the first baseball player to make $100,000. Right? I mean, everything changes generation by generation. And so when Jeremy's referencing, imagine what Tim Tebow thinks, that he was one of the greats and he got nothing compared to what a rookie offensive tackle is getting.
He didn't get nothing, though.
He get nothing.
Well, but relative to today, he did. Right?
I mean, I guess, like, he didn't get paid while he was in school. That's what he didn't get.
Okay, and when he came in, nobody offered him a cut of the Florida Gators' revenue. I mean, everything has changed fundamentally. It's just a crazy time we're living in. I don't begrudge the athletes for getting their share, but I also think it's to the detriment of the sport, because how can Texas Tech, beginning at the university level, not just the athletic program, how can they abide all of this? How can they continue to function when they're giving away revenue to players?
Well, you can't say that you have no feeling about it being negative and then say it's a detriment to the sport.
I think it's a detriment to the health of the sport. That's something the sport has to figure out.
So then you have a negative feeling about the athlete being paid if you think it's to the detriment of the sport. I don't agree with you that it's to the detriment of the sport. I think the sport is healthier than it's ever been, and there's more money to share than there's ever been. And I am super curious, once someone gets a Tebow, what's that worth?
Right.
Like I am legitimately awed about how seismic the change is, but I am not reticent or opposed to the change, because anywhere you find growth, you will find change. So if I'm finding revenue growth, I'm going to find growth of all kinds everywhere. I don't see where and how it's a detriment to the sport. If Texas Tech can play in this game, then anyone can.
Right. If Texas Tech, though, is giving revenue sharing to the offensive tackle, what about the 5-star quarterback? What does he get?
But so what, though?
So
like,
what?
Why would you want to limit costs on that?
Here's so what, because if you're giving revenue sharing to your 10 biggest football players and your 5 biggest basketball players, what does that do to the tennis program and all the other sports on campus? There's a trickle effect that's going to hurt college sports. It's going to be great for some of the top-tier athletes. And don't make any mistake about this. This is only the top-tier athletes we're talking about. Okay, the third-string guard is getting an NIL deal from the Dairy Queen for free ice cream and $50 a month. He's not getting this revenue sharing. It's a top-heavy system right now that's going to trickle down and affect other sports.
Why wasn't it bad for sports last year or the year before that? Like, when are you announcing that it's bad for sports?
I'm just announcing that giving athletes revenue sharing is a whole different level of payment.
Well, it's just giving them some ownership. It's
Right.
it's the way the whole world is moving in terms of you can be your own brand, you can start your own thing on the internet, you can be an entrepreneur. It's business is all moving
Right.
in this direction.
I agree, and it's good for the ones at the very top.
But it's good for everybody who gets money, right? More people are getting money than have ever gotten it,
Right.
correct?
Yeah, but 90% of them are getting what?
Okay, it's an imperfect system, but
Right.
it's better than it's been in terms of compensating them fairly, is it not?
It's better than it's been in the sense that all of a sudden, I think what began all of this, I think what tipped over the domino here was the star quarterback looking at his college coach getting $10 million or more per season, and the star quarterback who's winning the games is getting nothing. And he's looking at the TV contract. He's looking at how much money his school gets from being in a major bowl. And he's going, give me mine. And that's fair on the face of it. But the guy blocking for him on his offensive line is getting very, very little, relatively speaking.
I just told you he just got $5 million.
I know, but he's the exception. He's the 5-star, number 1 rated offensive tackle naturally.
Okay, but that's
So nobody should get the money since the bottom guys aren't getting it? Like, I'm confused what you're arguing for here.
There's no equity right now. Okay, it's a top-heavy system that's enriching.
there's literal equity. There might not be equality. They're giving him equity in the revenue
You're right.
share.
There's no equality.
I mean, isn't
in
that
the
life?
equity.
Like, in what job is there equity?
I mean, in every job there's equity, right?
No, the people who are better make more money.
Okay, but if you have a union, you make a minimum amount. There's such thing as a minimum wage, right? The relative to the.
But wouldn't the minimum? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but wouldn't the minimum wage be you're on scholarship? That's the minimum wage.
Well, that used to be everything. And now the top players are getting revenue sharing, and the bottom players are getting nothing.
But
relative
you're
to
very
revenue sharing.
worried about the bottom players who aren't getting anything, while not sort of acknowledging that the top players are now getting something closer to their actual
Right.
value.
Yes.
which represents improvement and growth and isn't necessarily bad for anybody other than people who are lamenting that they want their old sis boom ba amateurism back.
Okay, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the idea that this offensive tackle is getting a cut now of the revenue of Texas Tech is a whole new level of payment that is going to have a negative trickle-down effect on the whole athletic program at a school, I believe.
But you can't prove that in any way, and you're just objecting to it on its face because it makes you uncomfortable.
I can't prove it in any way because we are right in the middle of it. Not even in the middle of it. We're right at the front of it. We are just beginning. All of this is unfolding. NIL was new a couple of years ago, and now revenue sharing is new. This is a groundbreaking story, I think, because of the revenue sharing aspect.
Would you not say, though, and I'll leave this after this because I know this is an age-old July argument, but would you not at least concede, if we're talking about equitable or we're talking about fairness, paying the tackle $5 million is more in line with whatever the athlete's worth is, what the value is, than whatever is the guy or the woman on the crew team that you're worried about right now.
Sure.
Neither of them are being paid.
Right.
Neither of them are being paid their value necessarily, because in the case of a Tim Tebow, he's worth much more than whatever it is that you would pay him,
Right.
just by virtue of being that size of the economy. But you would agree, right, that it's more fair now than it used to be on value, on just measuring the value of athletes, what they're worth.
Well, the football program and men's basketball programs have always carried college sports across the country, right? And the fairness comes in, and Title IX used to insist that if you had a men's golf team, you had to have a women's golf team, a good thing. Now Title IX is being systematically dismantled, and so what we're going to see is top-heavy. This is a prediction. I can't prove it's going to happen. We're going to see college programs really pared back. There's not going to be any crew teams. Maybe the tennis programs are going to be intramural now instead of varsity.
But isn't that sort of capitalism?
Yes. Yeah.
If I was on the crew team, I would just kind of put my hand up and be like, look, I don't deserve what the football team deserves.
Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah, and maybe some of them are realistic enough to think that. I don't think they'd say it, but
I mean, do you guys think that there's going to be a collective bargaining agreement sooner or later? Because it just seems like they're going to form a union and the school's going to talk to them, and boom, there you go. We got a legally binding contract here.
If anything, Greg, the concern that you have about this inequity, I would think this is actually a step in the right direction, right? Because if revenue sharing starts becoming a piece of this, that's when ultimately revenue sharing is dispersed to the entire team. So the issue that you have, which is, hey, these individuals are getting paid all this much, the people getting the major NIL deals that are separating themselves from the rest of the group, those are the people we're talking about who are like the individual content creators or things like that. When you're starting to deal with revenue sharing, you're talking about having stake in the company that you're working for, right? And it's mutually beneficial to both the company and yourself for that company to succeed. So if anything, this is a step in the direction toward what you want, which is making sure that everyone on the team is getting a piece. And in this scenario, it's a giant offer to get one individual guy.
Right.
But I would think that this is sort of the first step in a years-long process that might eventually lead us toward revenue sharing with every athlete in college football, because that's what ultimately happens in all of these professionalized leagues.
I would hope that you're right. I think it's a big leap to assume that's going to be the next step, because Texas Tech can afford to cut in this great offensive tackle, supposedly great offensive tackle. They can afford to cut him into revenue sharing. But there's 10 other players on that team who want their share right now because of what he got. And the star of the men's basketball team is going, what about us? And so's the number one player on the men's tennis team. There's going to be a demand for revenue sharing, and the revenue may not be there. I don't know how this is going to work. Maybe it's going to work at an Alabama, a Notre Dame. I don't know. How's it going to work at a Texas Tech? How's it going to work at a Florida Atlantic University?
Let them worry about that.
Okay, and they will, and they are. I would not want to be an athletic director right now in college sports because it's turned into a complete nightmare, a thicket, a mangrove.